Welcome to the Accounting Arc Podcast, where analysis, reaction, and comedy collide to tackle the big topics from the world of accounting and beyond. Join our trio of transformation agents as they discuss the hottest topics in and out of the profession, from breaking down industry trends, to reacting to everyday events, to uncovering the hidden humor in numbers. With wisdom, insight, and a dash of levity, they're proving that accounting isn't just about the numbers. It's about life. Because after all, accounting is in everything. The Accounting Arc Podcast starts now.
All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for another edition of our ARC podcast. And this one we are with Jeremy here. And Jeremy, rather than me kind of butcher an introduction for you, I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Donny, and appreciate you having me on your show. As you mentioned, I'm Jeremy Dubow, CEO and co-founder of Prosperity Partners, a tax and accounting firm headquartered in Chicago.
Thank you. Can you give us a feel maybe of the size of your firm and what are the things that you guys do or focus on?
Absolutely. Today, we're approximately 120 people, though it feels like every time I open up my email, we're hiring somebody else in one of the 5 offices that we have. So we're clearly a growing accounting firm. In terms of what we do, we provide accounting, client accounting services, which is the buzzword for doing outsourced accounting for businesses. We also provide high-level tax services to individuals, businesses, entrepreneurs, family groups. So to some extent, we're a traditional business in that we provide kind of the services that most people think about from accounting firms. But then we also do a bunch of special project work as well, such as valuation work, cost segregation, litigation support, and some of the ancillary services that are in demand from our clients that are looking for high-end advisors to solve much of their accounting and tax needs.
I'm so glad you mentioned all the other things that you do, because one of the things that we're trying to help, especially students, really understand is that accounting is more than just your traditional audit, tax, outsourced bookkeeping, as you say, or internal finance department type of things. And so even one of the other big things that we've heard is that, there's very much often a push at the college level, like you have to go work for a Big Four. So I love that a firm of your size that can actually offer more opportunities on all of these different areas.
Yeah, admittedly, so as the CEO of the business, I support all of the different service lines that we provide to our clients. But my background is in tax, so I always will have a soft spot for tax services, and there's no doubt that there's a lot of other interesting services, and including things like cost segregation and litigation support, forensic accounting. Those are no doubt interesting to people that are coming into the profession. But just to make a quick plug for tax services, which I know at times can get a bad rap, those that are really good at tax. One, you need to have an accounting background. You can't be great at tax unless you understand accounting in the first place. But secondly, you get to understand and think like an accountant, but you also get to, read, write, analyze, look at complicated issues and save people money. And so it's not the worst thing either on the tax side.
I love that you did that, and I'm glad you did find that, because I do feel like, well, one, especially in CPA, we often get associated with tax, and I do agree with you. Tax tends to be viewed as kind of that boring thing, but there's so many more nuances to what happens in tax.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And for what it's worth, what you didn't hear me say, and I'll just mention it since we're talking, is we don't have an attest function in our business. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as to why and how we're a little bit non-traditional, perhaps, compared to some of the other accounting firms that you connected with. But I will say, despite where we are today in some of the buzzword private equity, we didn't have a test practice prior to that. And the reason is simpler than most people would think. It's because the people that started my business, me and two of my co-founders, were tax professionals. And when you start out in tax, you keep promoting tax, and we grew the firm, but we never ultimately brought on a audit function or acquired a business with a big audit function.
Well, well, I'm trying to think, should we bridge into that already? Actually, before I forget, since you mentioned private equity, I did want to bring that up because your firm is actually, normally when we think of private equity, we think of them going into really big firms and really helping, drive stuff and make the big firm effectively bigger. I know you guys are going through a lot of growth, as you said, but what do you see as the role of private equity? Because I think sometimes students hear that and they see a lot of the other stuff out there and they're like, ooh, private equity, bad. You've had a great experience with private equity. Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, I think from the outside, oftentimes there's a microscope on private equity, and people think of, well, private equity comes on in, they're going to somehow slash costs, slash people in the organization, focus solely on profitability. And I think the opposite is happening in public accounting. All of these businesses are ready for transformation, and they need the opposite of slashing. They need a heavy investment in technology, people, processes, and really all the buzzwords that you hear about in public accounting, which are outsourcing, automation, and to some extent AI, though we're all trying to figure out how AI ultimately weaves into what we're doing on the automation and the outsourcing side. So, for way of background, to your point, Donny, we are a private equity backed business. We're one of the smaller accounting firms that was out there. Certainly, you've read about deals where private equity is buying either a majority or minority interest in some of the larger firms out there, the top 25, top 40 accounting firms. We were certainly further down on that list, but we had a great group of partners. We were flexible. We were adaptive. We brought profitability to the table. You can't do a transaction unless you have some profitability. And we were the right business for a private equity firm that was looking at an accounting firm in the middle market space that could grow quickly and had the right dynamic leaders to lead the business in the right ways, focused on things like employee retention, automation, processes, a little bit of AI, but certainly outsourcing. So in order for a business to be successful in the future of accounting firms, you've got to make big changes. Private equity helps businesses like mine and certainly others in the industry make the big moves that the traditional partnership is not willing to do.
Wonderful, wonderful. When you mentioned earlier too that you guys really are also a non-traditional firm because you don't have that attest practice. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking a little bit about it before we jumped on, and on the one hand, I think we're traditional in that we provide client accounting services and tax services. On the other hand, we're non-traditional for a couple reasons. One, to your point, we don't do any attest work. And for those that know a little bit about private equity and accounting, there's this thing called this alternative practice structure where you carve out the attest function from the consulting practice or accounting/consulting practice. And so we didn't have to go down that alternative practice structure because we didn't have an attest function. So on the one hand, yeah, we're a little bit non-traditional that we don't have a test function. On the other hand, we're probably non-traditional because we're private equity backed at our size. And today, again, we're about 120 or so professionals, 5 offices, growing rapidly. But we were the smallest business, at least that made the news, that was private equity backed. And since then, we've acquired a handful of businesses. We've grown organically. We've been successful in our hiring, and we're looking to do really big things. But at the core of what we do, when we're talking to our clients, we are still strong providers of accounting and tax services, combined with some special project work that we do as well, related to things like valuation, litigation support, et cetera. And so, on the one hand, while things are very different in terms of how we look at technology, they're pretty similar when we think about how we interact with our clients.
Completely. And actually, listening to you explain that makes me think I should adjust what I said. You're a non-traditional larger firm, because most of the larger firms have every kind of everything in it. And you actually raised a really good point too, is when we see private equity come in, you start to see audit get pushed to a side or a separate subsidiary or something. So it's very interesting to see a firm like of your size already not have that function and then get this investment to continue to grow. Let's take a step back a little bit and really kind of, I'm curious, what is it about accounting that originally drew you to the profession? You've obviously vested, you started your own firm, but going back to why accounting and where did you start?
Yeah, I think I could be a great pitch person for accounting since I get really excited about it. Someone talks to me and you're gonna walk away. You might even have an appreciation or gain an appreciation for tax services and accounting services as well, because I get really excited about it. I think the opportunity is significant. But in terms of my background, which I think is really what you're asking, is I was a traditional accounting and finance major in college. So I matriculated from Washington University in St. Louis, and they had an undergraduate business program. Funny enough, though, somewhat unique for the other students who were accounting majors, I took a year of accounting in high school. So when I jumped into college and had my first accounting course, I started a year ahead. I started taking classes with the sophomores because I had essentially skipped the first year of accounting. And the irony is, as much as you learn in college, I felt that I gained all the fundamentals of speaking the language of accounting. And I talk about that with people as, it's not just debits and credits, it's like learning a language. It's translating a set of economics or financial results into debits and credits and accounting speak. And I feel like because I went through this pretty basic level class with T accounts and ledgers in high school, I actually became pretty good at it, or at least had an advantage compared to some of my peers in college. And so I started and spent 4 years taking accounting in college, and I had an internship at Arthur Andersen. So many of your students probably don't recognize that name, but at the time, Arthur Andersen was one of the big five, and before big five, it was big eight and big six, and then big five, and now, as they say, the final four after Andersen blew up due to the Enron debacle. But I interned at Arthur Andersen as a tax professional, and then they offered me a job after that internship. And so I started with Andersen, and I tell people all the time, had Enron not happened, I think, all these years later, and I'm about 26 years later, if your listeners want to do the math on what my age is, but I anticipated I would have tried really, really hard to make partner over at Andersen. And that's, I think, where my path would have been. Instead, Enron happened. I moved over to Deloitte, which is a great place where a lot of my ex-colleagues still are at in various leadership roles, and then decided to do something different. And that was, with a couple of my colleagues from Andersen and Deloitte, be an entrepreneur. We as accountants often get a rap of we're not creative, we're not risk-taking, we're not entrepreneurial. Well, I don't know. I think we bucked that trend. And at 26 years old, I left Deloitte, gave notice, started a business from scratch. And here we are 21 years later. You're talking to me. I'm a bit older. We built a business with 115 people, generated interest from private equity, are known as, some of the strongest tax and accounting providers, in the country for what we do. So it's a fun story. It's a great story. And it's one that I think, I hope your listeners can appreciate that, there's a couple of different paths to being successful in public accounting.
Love it. Thank you for sharing so much detail on that. It's a little scary. I'm listening to you, how similar our stories actually are. So I also took accounting in high school, got to actually run the school. We actually started, I should say, not just run, we started our school bookstore. We sold mostly candy and snacks and things, but we had a few other things in there. But that was really where I got my foundation in accounting. So I also felt ahead when I went into college and took that 101 class, and I was like, oh, I've already kind of done a lot of this. In fact, I've seen it actually happen because we paid bills and created financial statements for the school bookstore. And I also started my firm right around 26. So a little scary just listening to you going, wow, big difference for me was just I was taxed and I was Coopers and Libra and later PwC and all that. But kind of cool.
Yeah, Donny, you took the other two. So I took Anderson and Deloitte. You took PwC and Coopers, which obviously merged into PwC. Now, I will say, just like you, I did use some of my accounting background in high school to apply for the job of manning the hot dog cart in the middle of my town, and it was actually a business. I had to go
Mm.
buy the hot dogs and the chips and the sodas and keep a ledger and keep track of it. And I actually did this with one of my friends from high school who was also an accounting major, and I believe ended up being an accounting major in college as well. And so we got to use this accounting background that we had learned in high school at a pretty early age and actually run a little business in high school. And as I think about that business, maybe the highlight might have been when you operate a kind of a hot dog cart in the middle of town. What do you do for lunch when you're a 16-year-old with a absolutely rip-roaring metabolism? You eat 2 hot dogs a day, and then you go down the block and chase it down with a milkshake from Baskin Robbins. So, no doubt, times have changed. Can't quite get away with that anymore.
Oh, I love that kind of real stories. um, I actually said that a little earlier, like, we talk about the big four now. Everyone says work for the big four. I'm curious, what would be your advice? Because both of us just talked about how we both have that background. I often talk about how I actually don't recommend that to students anymore. And in fact, my experience at Cooper's and Library was actually with a small office. I was in the Honolulu office. So we were an office of 20 something, maybe at most 70 something people. What would be your advice to people who are interested in your career path, and what would you recommend for a student today?
Well, look, as the CEO of Prosperity Partners, a small-ish accounting firm that has offices across the country, I have to say, check out Prosperity Partners, where we have a boutique experience. But at the same time, if I am communicating with college kids who are looking to get into accounting, I think the experience at the Big Four was second to none. It gave me a platform for being the highest level tax advisor that I could be. Now, when I was there, I had the opportunity to be a generalist, and I ultimately think that made me a much better advisor. Whereas today, there's such a focus on specialization, that kids are coming out and they're quickly, moving from a generalist role into a specialized role. And what it does sometimes is it limits their ability to move on. Yep, they might be successful in the Big Four organization that they're at, and they might become an expert and have the opportunity to be absolutely one of the best in the country at a very specific area of tax. But I like a broader lens, and that's no offense to my friends that are still at Deloitte and at some of the other Big Four firms or top 25 firms. I get it. There's a huge focus and a push on specialization. At the same time, we try to create generalists, and we think that the best tax advisors can dabble in multiple areas of tax. And frankly, our clients are asking for that. They have questions and they want answers, and they want people who can solve their problems without necessarily having to bring in, 4 different experts to solve one single problem. So I absolutely like the Big Four. Great people, great training, great expertise. You learn how to be a professional. But I think today, more so than ever, there are other paths to success in accounting, including through some of the small firm routes, as long as those small firms are doing the right things with respect to technology to be one of those transformative firms.
Completely agree with you. Completely agree with you. The value that I got from my experience really was, like you said, that exposure. And I don't use the term generalist because that sometimes that goes jack of all trades. I actually use the term versatilist because we're not super shallow in a lot of stuff. We're actually about mid deep in a lot of stuff, which allows you to then identify, hey, there's an opportunity here, there's an opportunity there, here's a red flag here. Let's really tie in. And if we need to, let's pull in someone that actually is a specialist into that.
Yeah, I like that term. I might steal that, Donnie. Now, I will say that one of my favorite books. So I try not to read too many business books. When I read, I like to do it for fun. But I do admit from time to time I jump into these because there's a lot to take. One of my favorite ones is David Epstein's Range. And it uses the term how a generalist thrives in a world full of experts. And it gives a bunch of stories and anecdotes how, the folks that are a versatilist or a generalist end up, coming up to reaching much better conclusions because they're more well-rounded or versatile. And so I use that with my team often. I encourage my team to be as broad as they can be, and I think it helps them be stronger advisors for their clients.
Wonderful. I definitely like that. I'm gonna have to check out that book. When we talk about our clients, we often kind of see ourselves, or maybe a positioning for us as accountants is really kind of being that hero for our clients. I don't like to use the word hero because it tends to, I'm going to save the day and I have to go through extraordinary lengths, which I think sometimes contributes to some of the burnout. So we actually call ourselves agents of transformation. We're really helping our clients go through transformations and to be more successful in the end. Have you ever felt like you've done this job of kind of saving the day for your clients? And could you share an example?
Yeah, I feel like I do that every day of my life. The types of clients that we work with, they're looking for strong, sophisticated advisors who are helping solve problems. For example, in our firm, we do a lot of mergers and acquisition, tax planning, and tax structuring. And the way a deal is structured oftentimes has a material tax impact on the sellers of the business or the business owners. And, just this week alone, one of our larger clients is going through a several $100 million transaction. And we recommended an alternative structure than what was originally proposed. And due to certain attributes that the clients and the business has, we expect to save somewhere between $15 and $20 million for a couple of individuals on this transaction. Tell you what, you do that, they certainly think you're a superhero.
Wow, that's huge. Yeah. Going beyond just the tax expertise in this case, what do you think makes up a real life superhero?
Yeah, if you ask my children, probably the ability to fly or break walls. In my world, it's a little bit different than that. I think the superheroes are the ones that are empathetic to their team. They have the ability to train people to become experts in their fields. They have the ability to create a business where people want to be. In accounting, where we keep reading over and over how more and more people are leaving the profession. I think, Donnie, you even mentioned that you don't interview a whole lot of people that are in public accounting anymore because everyone leaves it. So my job, to be honest, as a superhero, is to create a business where we don't have turnover, and we train people to be strong professionals, and we create professionals who want to stick around, and they appreciate the culture. They trust their colleagues. We have a people-first organization and a culture of respect. So to some extent, I think in my world, we can be a superhero if we can buck the trends of what's happening in public accounting and make our firm and our business be the place that is different than the others, where people want to work, want to stay, view it as an opportunity to have a long-term career, versus just a job where you're always looking to move to the next place. So, there's a different answer for what my children think are superheroes and what I think is, the types of things that we can provide to people that work in this organization.
Completely. And that's why I kind of had the real life there, because we all know there's that concept of what the superheroes do, but there are those of us in real life that actually do this. And I love that you're doing this within your firm. I'm going to change a little bit of the interpretation of what I said. I don't interview as many traditional, meaning someone from a tax background or just a tax or just an audit background. And actually, you're not that person either because you've got all this M&A and all this other stuff going on with you, and you're actually leading the firm. I love this culture that you're creating at your firm. Turning really to you, what is your superpower?
Yeah. So on our website bio, we have some fun with it. If you can't quite tell, I think we have a firm that despite working hard at times and doing high level work, we try to have a lot of fun, and we certainly have a culture of fun in our business. One of the questions that is on there is, if you were going to, what would be the title of your autobiography? And for me, that was fun. And I wrote on my website, for anyone in your listeners to go take a look at, I wrote driven. Because I am a person that is incredibly driven. I like routine. I get up really early every day, work out nearly every day, and have the ability to focus incredibly well. And I can focus throughout the day, but at the same time, when I think about, some of my, superhero powers, in terms of what I do for a living and really anything in life is, I think I have a strong knack for taking complex topics and explaining it in ways that people can understand. So I've had the opportunity to talk to clients for a very long time, and they know that when they work with me, they're going to walk away having a better understanding of some really complex concepts. And on the other hand, I think I created an environment for the people in my organization where, they trust me, they respect me, they know that I'm going to work hard and I'm going to do everything that they're doing. And that creates, an atmosphere and a culture where everyone wants to succeed and help out their peers. So, using the theme of driven, a lot of my life comes from, being driven, motivated, competitive, to always do my best. And hopefully when I do it well, it benefits all the people around me.
Wonderful. I especially like the part where you talked about effectively making the complex understandable by clients. That always reminds me of the AICPA's purpose of a CPA, which is to make sense of a changing and complex world. And I feel like the world just keeps getting more complex. And as you mentioned earlier, really being that versatile is needed because you need to have that better understanding of a lot of different aspects, whether it's business tax or even personal tax in the broader picture that's a part of, to really help our clients be more successful. Yeah. One last flip on that one. So you've told us what your superpower is. What is your weakness? Like Superman, it was kryptonite. What is your weakness? Or critical vulnerability is the other way it's been phrased.
Look, it's the same thing. I always want to be successful. We push hard to win and be successful. Anyone who knows me knows that you're going to pick up a racket sport with me, maybe play a little pickleball. I don't like to lose. I really don't. And when I do, I think I handle it well. But I think certainly my weakness is I'm pretty focused on being successful as a person, as a business owner, hopefully as a father to my kids. And sometimes when you're a perfectionist, you're going to fall short of your goals, and you got to deal with that. And so certainly as I've spent now 26 years in my professional career, there's been moments of failure. And for me, someone who is really driven and motivated and competitive, I've had to learn how to deal with some of those failures. At the same time, the failures have made me much better as a professional. It's made this company and this business a much stronger business. I think I spent the first 10 years of running this company learning from all the mistakes that we made. And while they got to me, there's no doubt that they did, I think it's made me a better professional. It's made our business stronger.
Love that. Funny you mentioned that. I actually was just reading Joy Inc., that book about how Rich Sheridan had created a culture of joy within his company. And one of the things was fail fast, make mistakes, learn from them, and really be able to move forward quickly. So great affirmation there. Highly recommend that book as well, because it's a great culture type of a book. If you happen to be willing to read something that's also business, but not quite business, because it's about how do you create joy in the workplace.
I'll check it out. That sounds like a great title. I haven't read it, but very interesting. I'll check it out.
Well, thank you so much for spending all this time with us. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, they can go to our website at prosperitylllc.com, or they can also email me at jeremy@prosperitylllc.com. You Google my name, Prosperity Partners will come up. You'll find our website. You'll find my bio. You'll find access to me.
Thank you so much again. I hope all of you that are listening enjoyed this brief, but I think quite insightful discussion with Jeremy, and will join us on the next episode. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Donny.
The Center for Accounting Transformation provides business professionals with a network for utilizing innovations that are ready for adoption, the training and resources necessary to apply those innovations, and an opportunity to engage the talent and community needed to further the pursuit of innovative accounting practices that drive responsible and mindful business performance. Find out more at our website, www.improvetheworld.net. And if you're interested in sharing your own transformation stories, please contact us there.